Welcome to Moe's!
Tired of the same old catering? Moe's spices up any event. From the fresh ingredients to the free chips and salsa, we deliver everything. Let us bring the party to you. Order Moe's Catering today for your next event.
I'm James Benton with Crew 757 here with probably one of the best announcers, if not the best Virginia's ever seen, and the great Bill Nettles. Bill, it's been my pleasure over the past 3 years that I've been working for 757 to come to Todd Stadium, to learn from you, to listen to you. Even when I was coming as a fan, I came specifically to the stadium from Chesapeake to listen to you, sir.
Well, here's what you've done for me. As a member of what you're doing now, when you come over here and you show up, I get tons of scores. That allows me to pass out more information to the people. And that's all we're here for. That's all I end up doing, polishing on the game a little bit. I'm not the game itself. All I end up is polishing the game and trying to give the people as much information as we can. And you help me do that.
Well, I appreciate that, Bill. Let's go back to 1977, the Denby Football League, where it all started. You know, did you ever see, starting there, that you would be here today?
Never had any clue on any of that. And I just, that was a whim. I'd gone to Gate City. My son played youth football. He had a team in 1976 that finished undefeated, played in the Super Bowl here and won that. That put them at 9-0. There was a member on that team that was out of Newport News that had a connection with somebody in Gate City. Gate City had a team that had followed along the same path. They finished up undefeated and won the city championship, and they got a game together. We had to travel to Gate City to do it, and this is an interesting thing because I've often thought about trying to go back to where everything started, because that's where it did start. So we get up there, there's a little like building on the corner which was a concession stand, and above that was an area where you would announce games from. Well, we got up there and somebody said that was open and operational and we needed to get somebody to do it, and I'm just walking around not saying nothing, not doing anything, just there to watch the game. There were 2 or 3 people that were asked if they would do it, and all of them declined. At that particular time, Gene Long was the head coach, and somebody came to him and said something to him. He said, "Do you have anybody that would do it?" Gene says, points to me, he says, "He talks a lot, get him to do it." I went up there and did it. I can remember going up there with 2 rosters, one for each of the teams, and I can remember coming down at halftime. I came down, went to the concession stand. A lady came running up to me and she says, "Are you announcing the game?" I said, "Yes." She says, "You sound great. How long have you been announcing football?" I looked at my watch and I said, 30 minutes. She says, no, that's not what I mean. How long have you been announcing football? Looked at the watch again and said, 30 minutes. So when I came home from that, I started getting a youth bowl championship between 2 leagues. I worked that in 76, got it again in 77. Jim Osborne gave me a call in 1977 and said the city was going to put together a championship that was going to be played for the city football leagues. And the winner, take the 2 best teams, play them, and they would be declared the city champion. That was done in 1977. It is a venue that still continues to this day. I have done that for 41 years, and I've been the only announcer that has ever had. That's where everything started. The job here at Todd Stadium opened up in 1980. The person that had it left it very, very late in the summer. It was a week or 2 before games were going to be played here. Wayne McGore was the person that ran the facility. He got with Jim Osborne again. He says, "I know you've had somebody announcing football scores. Do you have anybody that would be interested in doing this?" Jim said, "Well, let me find out." He calls me at work, I guess it was about 10 o'clock, and says, "The job at Todd Stadium is open. Do you want it?" I said, "Is this high school football?" He said, "Yes." I said, "Yeah, I'll take it." He says, "I'll call you back." 10:15, he called me back and told me I had the job, and that's how it all started.
Well, speaking of that 1980, your first game, Denby Ferguson. What do you remember about that game? I mean, Denby has long been, had some rough years, over the past 37 years.
I can tell you what I remember about that game. I was nervous, very nervous. Even though I had a little football experience, I was now at an upper level. I was at a level that I had never been before. I had some information. I had some idea how to do it. but I also figured that there was a better way to do it than what I was doing it, and I had to try to find out what that was, and I had to find out quickly. And it didn't take me long. And this has been an ongoing process. If you look at what I do today compared to what I did last year, you'll see subtle changes in it. If you look at what I do next year compared to this year, you'll see changes in it. I think it's an ongoing process, and it has to continually change, and I'm always looking for a better way to do it.
Hey, we're always looking for a better way. And 37 years doing high school football, you know, Bill, I've got to ask you, the Peninsula's known for great football players. Who are some of the ones that stick out in your mind as being some of the best that you've called games for here at Top?
Hampton has had a couple. A young man by the name of Banks was here in the early 80s, and he played for Hampton. He was an awesome player. I remember him playing very well. He was probably one of the first ones that I came in contact with. And of course, Ronald Curry. Ronald Curry is the yardstick by which I measure everybody. I don't think his pro career was very good at all. I think his college career would have been better if he'd stayed with the commitment to Virginia. I think a lot of things would have been different for him. But those are suppositions. We won't know that for sure. But Ronald Curry is the yardstick by which I measure everybody. I saw Ronald Curry do things that I thought was absolutely impossible.
So let me ask you, because there are people that do say Curry is the best one to come out of the state, but I've also heard others say that what Allen Iverson did on that football field at Bethel was just amazing.
Allen Iverson played great ball. He played great football. Football was not his bailiwick. His real bailiwick was, as you well know, and everybody knows now, was basketball. But he was a remarkable athlete, whatever he did. And he was a good athlete when it came to playing football. Good enough to take him to a state championship. He got Bethel a state championship.
Now, Bill Nettles, speaking of Allen Iverson, I've heard a rumor that you once sold a battery that Allen Iverson, it was dead for $20.
It came out of the microphone that I had that we used to retire his jersey. I was over to the trash can, getting ready to throw it away, and I said out loud as I had pulled it out that this was the battery that powered the microphone that Allen Iverson used to retire his jersey. And I was ready to toss it in the trash can, and somebody stopped, hollered at me, and I said, "What?" And the guy says, "That battery." I said, "What about it?" He says, "I'll buy it." He gave me $20 for a dead 9-volt battery.
Well, Bill, you've done a lot of things. What other sports have you done other than football?
Well, you have to remember that what football was a guiding pattern to everything else. For instance, started football in 1980. By 1983, I got a call from George Walters. He was asking me to do basketball. I picked up basketball in, I think it was January the 4th, 1984. I started basketball. And I did basketball for a while. Out here, I had just come out of the press box in 1986 doing a state championship game between Hampton and Salem. I was approached by two people, and they were working with the Hampton Cup Regatta, which is limited inboard powerboat racing. We sat out here and talked, and they told me that they were interested in me doing that event. But they said, you know, before you accept this job, I need you to know something. We don't have any money, we can't pay you, we don't have this, we don't have that, we can't do this, we can't do that. They said, but what we would like you to do is announce it. Would you do it for us? I thought about this for about 5 seconds. In spite of all the can't do's, I accepted, and I was off on still another tangent. And this is the way this has been. Football has been a showcase, and I've picked up so many other things and gone in so many other areas. But when I went and did that, I was all over the place. I even went and picked up another powerboat racing organization called PIRA, Professional Inboard Racers Association. I worked events for them. I was working events for the APBA. And I was in places like Decatur, Illinois, Meridian, Mississippi, Lake Alfred, Florida, Columbia, South Carolina. I was all over the place. And we had, the highest that I had, I let it get to 11 events in a summer. And what this did, this backed up. You would have an event, then you'd be off a week, maybe 2 weeks, then you'd have another event, off a week, then you might have an event, followed by another event, followed by another event. And again, traveling as much as we were. Now granted, we were making good money at this. We were making very good money at this. But traveling like we were, it became kind of a strain on Trudy and I had to give her some break in there at some point in time. I started cutting back to 8, and then eventually there was a conflict between the two when they wanted me to work something in September. What am I doing in September? I'm doing
Football.
Yeah. And that was a fun night.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, didn't I see Trudy up here tonight
Not tonight. You
That's
saw
right. Or she was here last night.
She was up here last night.
And that was special because, what was that? Only the second time she's,
Second time in 38 years that she's been here.
I mean, so.
And I can remember very vividly the first time in 38 years when she came up here.
What game was that? Game number 1?
That was game actually number 500.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
So you were halfway there.
Halfway there.
You know, Bill, you know, we talk a lot about the players, but you've seen a lot of coaches come and go, and you've seen one stay throughout in Mike Smith. Other than Mike Smith, who are some coaches that have been over here on the peninsula that, you know, have really made an impact that you have seen, you know, on the game of football?
In my earlier years, I dealt with a coach at Bethel. His name was Bolin Shoup, and I thought he was an awesome coach. I thought he did a great job. He was there for a little while, and then he quit, and then he passed suddenly. I was sorry to see that happen. He was a great coach. He was a very good coach. I hated to see that happen to him. Him and Smith and Matthew Boone over here at Denby he was a great individual. Matthew didn't have great teams, but he was a great individual. I remember Matthew Boone very, very well.
See, and that's what coaching is. You know, I've seen, it's not, I know they want to talk about a lot of wins and losses, but making the difference in these kids' lives. And, you know, that's what you do. I mean, when they get to hear their names, you know, when they get to hear, like tonight, D'Angelo Cheston runs 58 yards for a touchdown on a drive that was 2 minutes and 58 seconds that took 6 plays.
We do that for the parents. The parents come here to watch the kids play. And what we try to do is pick as many people out on a play that has any contact or anything to do with it. We'll give first contact, second contact, and even third if we can. These are the people that are in the play. These are the people that are making the play. And the parents come here and they want to know what their kids are doing. And when they are involved into something, they want to hear it. We want to try to give as many people credit, as many of those kids credit for making plays as we possibly can.
Well, Bill, so many people came up here to see you tonight. I heard the
It
story.
was a little bit of a madhouse, yes.
Yes, I saw the story. I heard the story of the first 9-year-old girl that you had up here
Yep.
spotting was here,
Yep.
and
She stayed with me a long, long time, and I've just, and that's the thing with the game. The game, it's not necessarily the game. It's not necessarily the players. It's the people I've met. And you want me to tell you a good example?
yeah,
You. I would have never come in contact with you. I would have never known you. I would have never gotten to know what you do. I would have never had an association, and I've had a great association with you, because you've been up here, you do little things that nobody pays a lot of attention to, but to me, they help me do other things with these people here in the stands. That's just one side of it.
So I've heard, you know, 1, maybe 2 more years. 2 years puts you at 40.
That'll be working here, yes. And
Yes.
I won't go past 40, that I can tell you. I think my time up here is limited. I've had some knee problems. I had a lot of weight on me at one time. I got rid of 51 pounds. That helped me out a lot. I was able to get rid of the pills that I was taking for the pain in the knee. The knee still has pain, but I got rid of that. I'm not a pill person, so I've done that. I can still get up and down here. I think a lot of it is going to just be determined by next year, how well I can move around, how well I can handle the steps. 91 steps up here in the press box, they're a little daunting at this point in my life.
There's 2 other things that I want to ask you about. One, there was a football game that you called, I think it was at Harbor Park, between Phoebus and Lake Taylor. And I heard it was freezing cold and you couldn't see a thing.
You're right. Where we were parked at Harbor Park was where the people would go to, or the guy would stand up and announce a baseball game. Now the field was laid out so that the sideline ran down the left field line. So the field ran, the corner of the field was down where the home plate was, and that's where we were looking at, that far left corner of the field, straight down the field. There were no yard numbers marked on the field, but just lines. Wind was blowing a gale that night. What we had were the fold-up foam yard markers. All right, with the wind blowing as badly as it was, they weren't there. They were all piled up against the right field fence. So we had no way of knowing. When I made a call on a play, I had to start from the goal line and count up to see where the yard lines were. Finally, I had Craig. He was with me that night, and he was appropriately dressed for this. He looked like Nanook of the North, even though he was up in the press box with us. And I asked him, I had two-way radio communication, I had that. I said, Craig, can you go down on the field? And I said, I need you to walk on the sideline and just tell me where the ball is at. That's the only thing you need to do. They kept putting the yard markers back, the wind would take it down. God, it was brutal, brutally cold. And that's what he did for 3/4 of a game. That's all he did, march up and down the sideline and holler back at me on the radio and tell me where the yard markers were, where the ball was sitting, what the yard line. If it wasn't for that, we wouldn't have known. And that would have affected the quality of the job we did. We'd been telling people the ball was someplace where it wasn't.
So that might have been one of the roughest venues that you've called a game from.
That was pretty bad. We were in a bad spot to begin with. Cold was another item. Wind was another item. And I was just fortunate that I had a young man who was dressed properly that night and volunteered to go down there and put up with the temperature, because it was brutal. That's probably, of all of the conditions that I've had to work in, that's probably been the worst.
Another game that seems to set forth the thing in my mind, having read your thing, was the Fishbowl with Churchland.
That was interesting. Bill Strickland called me over there to do that game, and it was on a Thursday night. And it was between him and Churchland and I.C. Norcom, if memory serves me correct. And he said, I don't have an announcer, would I do it? So I said, yeah, because I had been working a lot of basketball over there, and Bill had had me do several things. So I told him that I'd come over there and work the game. So I did, and we went over there and we set up and we got ready to do the game. I can recall as I was doing the game, we had the window open, and the people were actually in the upper section of bleachers were sitting. They had their back leaning up against the top portion of the window where I was sitting. So, and they were listening to me, and I was calling out all this stuff. We were rattling off everything. And I can remember one particular play where Churchland player had caught a kick. It was a punt, and he had caught it. And there was a Churchland player behind him. And the player that caught the ball, he starts moving forward and he starts to slow down a little bit, but the player behind him doesn't, runs over top of him and knocks him down. So I had just sat there for a minute and I'm thinking, I can't give the player credit for the stop when he belongs to the team that the ball went to. So I kind of made an evasive statement basically about the ball was down, and everybody on that top row turned around and looked at me, and I said, so I had the mic off, I said, what's wrong? They said, we're waiting for you to tell us who brought him down. He said, you've told us on every other play who made the stop. I said, I'm not telling you this. And so they said, well, we're waiting. He said, we don't know who made the stop. I said, well, you're just going to have to go home not knowing. So, but they gave me a hard time over that, but it was a great game.
So everything.
I cost Bill his football announcer off of that, because I went over there doing the same thing I do here. So when, according to Bill Strickland, when his football announcer got back, everybody started asking me, hey, why don't you do this? You don't do that. You don't do this. You don't do the other guy did this. The other guy does that. And what happened was the guy got mad and quit. So Bill called me back and said, I need a football announcer because of you. I said, why? He said, well, everybody started teasing the guy, and he got mad and quit.
Well, you know, Newport News football, Virginia football is a better place because of your announcing. And the state appreciates everything you've done, the friendships that you've made. Nobody could take that away. The lives that you've touched out there on the thing.
That's interesting. It really is. I get stopped in various places and asked. I had a young man stop me, and this was pretty interesting. He stopped me one day, and he said, you're the announcer for basketball. I said, yeah. He said, do you remember me? He says, so he told me who he was, and I stood there, and boom, as soon as he said his name, it started pouring out. I said, yeah. I said, you're in a regional quarterfinal game. I said, you're over at Warwick High School. I said, the game is tied. I said, you're all the way over in the far right-hand corner. The ball is dished to you. Time is running out. You take a shot over there from the corner at Warwick and make it. And I said, your team wins. And his wife turned around, looked at me, and she turned around. She says, "Oh my God, I got to listen to all that over again." But you remember those things.
Well, I mean, you were. What'd you tell me last time? Wyoming, Montana, somewhere, and somebody knew you.
Yeah, now this was out of place. We were in Cody, Wyoming, and I had gone down at a motel, and I had gone downstairs to where the lobby was, and I was getting a cup of coffee or something. And I had on the VHSL shirt for the Coaches All-Star Games. And a guy was walking down, and I saw him looking at the shirt. And he says, "I know who you are." And I'm thinking, wow, I'm out here in Wyoming and the guy knows who I am. I said, that's a fat chance. I said, how do you know that? He says, I've been right up there and sat beside you and talked to you before. So I said, what was I doing? He said, you were announcing. He said, you were announcing football. I said, you went all the way out there? He said, yeah. So I said, what brought you all the way out there? He said, well, we only have 26 schools in the entire state that have a football program. I said, good Lord. I turned around and started. I said, we've got more than that. He says, I know, in the eastern region. I said, yeah. He said, that's why I recruit out there. So I sat and talked to him for a while, but I thought that was amazing.
Well, Bill, I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for the friendship that I've made over the last 3 years with you. You know, you letting me feed your scores and, you know.
I was going to tell you, you got to remember that that's a two-way door. That door swings both ways. You've given me just as much as I've given you. As a matter of fact, I would probably say I've got more from you than you've got from me. Because those are things that I'm just trying to do to help people out. I'm just trying to get, and people know that I'm fanatical over scores. And sometimes they're tough to get. But somebody like you comes in here and you know exactly what I need, and you start feeding them to me right away. As soon as I get a break in the action, they go out.
You know, and that's where Andy Hilton and the rest of the Recruit 757 staff come in, because I'm getting them from them and I'm feeding them right to you, so you can get it out.
Let me tell you another little thing that happened, making note of that. I came up here one year to do a postseason game, and as I'm walking up the stairs, I see a couple of guys from Bethel High School that I knew. They were fans. Well, I stopped and looked at him and I said, gee, I said, I'm surprised to see you here. I said, Bethel's playing across the river. He said, we know. I said, well, I thought you'd be over there watching that game. And he said, well, no, we came over here to this one because we knew if you were up there, you would tell us what's going on over there. I looked at him and shook my head. I said, you're right, you'll find out. We'll keep you abreast. So, I mean, that's kind of what it's grown to be known as.
Well, Bill, I appreciate the time that you've given us tonight for the interview. 1,000 games. You know, one, hopefully 2 more years we'll get to come out and we'll get to hear those beautiful lungs of yours. And maybe one day I'll get to hear you sing that national anthem.
Oh, I hope you never get a chance to do that, because that is not going to be pretty.